Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge that this episode of Down the Yarra is recorded on stolen and unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Eastern Kulin Nation. We recognise and pay our deepest respects to all First Nations people and their elders, past and present. We acknowledge their continuing connection to land, country, waterways, sky, culture and communities. We stand with them in their ongoing calls for truth-telling, treaty sovereignty, justice and reconciliation. This was and always will be Aboriginal land. Before we begin today's episode, quick heads up. This episode includes references to colonial violence, disposition, and colonial and conflict between settlers and First Nations people. Some listeners and viewers may find this distressing, so please, as always, listen with care and watch with care, of course. Welcome to Down the Yarra, the podcast that takes you on a deep dive into the heart and soul of Naarm-Melbourne and South Central Victoria. Whether you're a local or just curious, this podcast is for you. Hello, I'm your host, Andy, and today we're filming on right near the Battle of Yering, Ara Valley. Okay, let me set the scene. The year is 1840. The colonial footprint was fresh on the soil of the Ara Valley. The mighty Yering, or the Yarra, still flows untamed, and yet tensions are rising between the settlers and First Nations. On January 13th, 1840, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation come face to face with the mounted police from the Port Phillip Protectorate, in which would later become known as the Battle of Yering. A moment of resistance, cunning, strategy, and deeply and deadly symbolism. This wasn't a one-sided massacre. This was a stand, and today we're going to tell the story in full. Let's rewind the clock back to January 13th, 1840. We're on Wurundjeri country, what the settlers were calling Yering in the upper Yarra Valley, just near present-day site of Yarra Glen. The land had been cultural meeting place for tens of thousands of years beforehand. But settlers, shepherds, and newly installed Port Phillip Protectorate, Aboriginal Protectorate, led by Assistant Protector James Dirge, were attempting to civilise and control the area. A group of Wurundjeri men reportedly took settlers' goods, possibly in response to encroachment, broken promises, and prior injustices. Protected officials, including Dirge and Captain Henry Gibson, interpreted this as theft. They marched with a group of native police and mounted officers towards the Wurundjeri camp, near present-day Yering station, which you can see in the background, sort of. Determined to assert colonial law. Amongst these leading Wurundjeri was Jaga Jaga, or Jeki Jeki, senior headsman and respected leader of this tribe. What happened next was less a traditional battle and more a sharp skirmish, fast, strategic and symbolistic. The mounted officers approached the camp and captured Jaga Jaga. But in a clever and coordinated move, the Wurundjeri warriors used discretion and cover to outflank the police and free their leader without a single shot being fired by either side. Now that's pretty remarkable. The colonial forces retreated. The Wurundjeri had won this round, not by brute force, but of precision, planning and resistance. Like so many other conflicts of this time, the Battle of Yering didn't end in a massacre, but its legacy matters today. It challenged cultural assumptions that First Nations people wouldn't fight back or win, for that matter. It's a rare recorded example of Indigenous resistance in Victoria, where First Nations people emerged with strength, unity and resolve intact. Colonial expansion did not stop, however. More settlers arrived, land was fenced, culture was criminalised, and the Wurundjeri were forced into deeper marginalisation. What's haunting about the Battle of Yering is how little it is known or taught in schools today. There's almost no detailed First Nations oral accounts in public records, yet the story survives through storytelling, retelling, through resistance and through the land itself. It's a reminder of how colonial archives were never neutral. They often erased what matters most to the people who lived in these moments. Today, the Yering region is known for its vineyards, cycling trails and weekend escapes. But beneath the soil, stories still breathe of Wurundjeri warriors, of leadership and of people who would not bow to settlers' whims or rifles. Battle of Yering is a landmark moment of sovereignty, resistance and First Nations pride. And speaking of power and legacy, in our next episode we'll dive into the life, times and legacy of John Pascoe Faulkner, the second founding father of Melbourne, who was a convict son, newspaper man, rebel rouser, and one of the loudest and most controversial voices in early Naarm-Melbourne. Is he a hero or hypocrite, or something in between? Don't miss it. Thanks for listening to Down the Yarra. If you're watching this on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, comment and share it with someone who's never heard of this battle before. I'm your host, Andy, and this has been another journey into the heart and soul of Naarm-Melbourne, South Central Victoria. As always, stay curious, stay respectful, and remember, the past is never really past us.